Okay, welcome everybody to our presentation of Citizens Initiative, and thank you all for coming. Our presenter tonight is Gay Williams. She is president of the League of Women Voters, Wake County, and she will be assisted by myself and Ellen Reckow, who is the co-president of the League of Women Voters, ODC, Orange Durham Chatham. I will be conducting the Q of A after Gay has completed her presentation. And again, I request please put your questions in the chat and I will be monitoring that. And we will take questions, as many as we have up until 8 o'clock. If there are any questions at the end that haven't been answered, we will have a copy of them and we will get back to you with the answers as best we can. So now I will turn this program over to Gay. Unmute, Gay.
That would be the first thing. Thank you, Linda. I really appreciate it. I listened to Ariane and muted myself. So thanks so much. And we really appreciate so many folks getting together. We've got 42 and counting. So that's excellent. We know that you could invest your time in many areas, many places, and we're glad that you're here to invest it with us and to learn a little bit about Citizen Initiative and specifically the North Carolina League of Women Voters position on Citizen Initiative. So Ariane, if you wouldn't mind sharing the presentation, we can get started with this portion. And as Linda mentioned, please go ahead and put your questions in the chat because we do have so many people. Managing the questions through chat will help us out a lot, and we appreciate that. You can go ahead to the next slide, Ariane. So what is a citizen initiative? Well, you might hear it called other things. It can be a ballot measure. It can be citizen initiative. It can be a citizen-led ballot measure, a citizen-led ballot initiative, a citizen-led measure. There can be many, many names for that. So you might hear about it as one term or another, but we're going to use the term citizen-led ballot initiative or citizen initiative or just CI for short. Go ahead. So what is it? In a nutshell, a citizen initiative or a citizen-led ballot initiative is an opportunity for voters to take something that's important to them, get signatures from many other voters, and then have that measure or that issue put on the ballot for all the voters to consider and vote on. That is it in a nutshell. And so sometimes people think of this as a complicated concept. It's actually a pretty simple concept. It can get complicated in the implementation for sure. And we're not going to get far in the weeds tonight, but we're going to get a little bit there so you can see what our position is like. But that is essentially what it is, an opportunity for voters to gather signatures from other voters to have something put on the ballot so that all the voters can consider and vote on that idea. About half of the states currently have some sort of citizen-led ballot process. In North Carolina, we do not, at least not yet. Next slide. So why do we need citizen initiative in North Carolina? Well, this is the first question that we, as a study group, we're now a league action team, but we were initially a study group. And we spent about 18 months or more looking at this question, why do we need citizen initiative in North Carolina? And if so, what should that look like? Our study team was comprised of about a dozen members from leagues across the state, from the mountains to the sea. We had great representation. And as we asked ourselves this question, we said, Yes, and I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But why do we need it? We currently, as I mentioned, we can only consider a change to our Constitution if, in North Carolina, if the legislature decides that they want us to consider a change. A new law can only be passed if it's done by the legislature. So, what happens if the legislature is not responsive to the citizens? Or if perhaps part of the legislature is and another part is not, they don't agree with each other, then we get gridlock and things don't move forward. And we don't have the reforms that the citizens may want. Citizen initiative or citizen-led ballot measures allows us as the public, eligible voters, registered voters, we can gather signatures and have something put on the ballot for voters to consider. Next slide. So how does it work? This is a super high level view of how this might work. If the North Carolina General Assembly is not responding to voters' desires for reform, then, as I've mentioned a couple of times, voters can take it into their own hands. They can go out and gather signatures with guardrails, which are very important, and we'll talk about that. If they gather enough signatures, then that proposed law or amendment will go onto the general election ballot, and the voters vote on it, and they either approve it or disapprove it. So it's not that CI would push anything on voters. It would give voters an opportunity to consider something that the legislature may not have been successful in getting to the voters in the past. Next slide. What you might be wondering, what types of things might be dealt with with a citizen initiative. There are many different types of things. You see two and a piece years represented here. On the left, you see in 2024 a number of topics that were covered by citizen initiative that were, it doesn't mean they all succeeded, but they were all raised as potential measures for voters to vote on in states where some sort of citizen-led process is available. So everything from education reform to the minimum wage, independent redistricting commissions, ranked choice voting, legalizing marijuana, reproductive rights, and you've probably heard about many of these in the news over the last couple of years. In 2024, there were more than 60 citizen-initiated ballot measures, and more than half of those passed. In 2025, states considered more than 30 ballot initiatives, but only 2 of those in our research showed that they were citizen-initiated. Of those, 1 passed. And so far in 2026, there are quite a few measures that are going to be on 2026 ballots. And that was as of March 19th, there were more than 70, and 13 of those were citizen-initiated. What else are we seeing? Well, the next point on my slide is unfortunate, but we're seeing a trend of legislative backlash. And what does that mean? In several different states where there is some type of citizen-led approach available, the state legislatures are pushing back or trying to repeal items that were passed under a citizen-led process. They are not being successful in all cases. And in fact, there were recent cases where state Supreme Courts have thwarted those efforts and said, no, the citizens have the right to do this. The legislature does not have the right then to pull it back. So that's just something to be aware of, that there is pushback from legislatures. And I've mentioned this a couple of times that, right now in North Carolina, we can only consider those measures that the legislature wants us to consider. Next slide. So we've talked about where CI is in our state. It doesn't exist. But what should it look like? Well, as a study group, and you may be aware that the league takes a very structured approach to how we study issues, and we do not advocate for an issue unless we have a position on it. The US League does not have a position on citizen initiative, and neither did the state league until last year. So our study group looked at, number one, I said before, should we have a position? We decided to recommend that we should. And then what should that position look like? We looked at many different league positions across the country, and we considered building our position from the ground up, but we decided in the end that we would recommend concurring with another state's position because it was very close to where we thought ours should be. And rather than invest more time and league members' time to create a position from scratch that already pretty much existed, we took the option that the league has to do what is called concurring, to concur with another state's position. And in this case, it was Alabama. Alabama is in a similar situation to ours in that they do not currently have citizen-led initiatives in their state. And their position had enough detail that we felt comfortable it addressed most of the issues that we gathered as we talked to league members around the state. But it didn't go so far into the weeds that made it inflexible for whenever that window of opportunity opens that realizing CI in our state could be a possibility. So we chose to recommend concurring with the Alabama position. So if you were to find Alabama's position and North Carolina's, you would see those two league positions are exactly the same, except we changed the terminology to match North Carolina's state government instead of Alabama's state government. And that's how concurrence works, just as a side note. You have to take the position as it is. You can't change it. Now, we could change it in the future, but for now, we need to leave it as it is. So what does it say? Well, one thing it says, our position says, is that we believe that through a CI process, citizens should be able to propose both laws and constitutional amendments. So not just constitutional amendments. So both of those. The other thing we really like about the position is it provides a number of safeguards throughout the process. And there were three really big pieces to this process. One is preparing the proposal. The second is collecting signatures. And the third is campaigning for passage of the initiative and the actual vote itself. And we really liked, one of the things we really liked about the Alabama position and now ours is that it has safeguards built in throughout that process. Next slide. So these are just a few examples of the safeguards. This is not all of them. We'll take a look at the position online and you can study it. If you were to print it out, it's about 2 pages long. So we're not going to go line by line through that position, but we'll be happy to talk about it during Q&A. But these are a few examples. So limiting each initiative to a single subject. If you compound the initiatives into multiple subjects, then it becomes hard to have a clear yes and a clear no, which is our third point here. As you may think yes on one part and no on another part, but we also don't want a ballot to be really long and have just many subjects for voters to consider. Requiring clear identification of sponsors and periodic financial disclosures of those sponsorship. Who's really backing having this pass? That's important, as most of us know. Having a reasonable time limit for signature collection, and then having signatures validated before that initiative goes on the ballot. And that's to avoid the case where you have a vote on something and then the signatures are challenged. If there's challenges to the signature, that needs to happen before the initiative goes on the ballot. So those are just a few examples. You can go to the next slide. And I know league members, you're going to press next one more time, and the picture will come up on the side. Yeah, thanks. So I know league members, and I know you want to dig in more, and we will do that during Q&A. But for now, we want to let you know where where you can find that information. And Ariane's going to click over there and show it to you. So if you'll scroll down just a little bit, Ariane. So this is our Citizen Initiative page on LWVNC's website. And you'll see we've got some introductory information. You can keep scrolling. The co-chairs of the League Action Team are Jennifer Bremer, Ellen Reckhow, and myself. And so you have our email addresses. You can click through and contact us if you'd like. And then we have a little preamble to the position here. And if you scroll just to the next header, Ariane, the position itself. And so it starts there where it says the LWV Citizen Initiative position statement. So that's our actual position adopted at convention last year. And I'm not going to read through it, but keep scrolling, Ariane. I want to show them down at the bottom of the page where there we go, some more resources. And just scroll a little bit more. Yeah, that's good. So while we were still a study group and before the position was approved, we had statewide information sessions made available. We did 3 of those. Those are all linked here. So if you're interested, we had, can you scroll up just a little bit so I can see the first? Thank you. We had Professor Asher Hildebrand from the Sanford School of Government speak to us. We had Dr. Justin Phillips from Columbia University, and we had Dr. Carolyn Jefferson Jenkins speak, who is a former LWV US president and an adjunct professor at UNC Chapel Hill, or she was at the time. She was also helped the League in Colorado develop their citizen initiative work. And so that was really useful. And so you've got links to all those recordings. And then down at the bottom, you have our background paper, the case statement from our team, the Citizen Initiative FAQ, and advantages and disadvantages. So lots of information available to dig your teeth into there. And you can go back to the deck. And go ahead and go to the next slide. I'm going to pause here for just a moment. Well, I'm not going to pause, I'm going to keep talking. But while you're here, you may want to, if you like using QR codes, we've got the QR code for that Citizen Initiative site. It's not super easy to find just through the search feature on the LWVNC site, but you can find it if you simply do an internet search for LWVNC Citizen Initiative. You'll find it. But you can use this QR code. The other resource here is the Ballot Initiative Strategy Center Foundation. This is a great organization that tracks ballot initiatives across the country, and some of the data that I shared with you earlier came from that resource. You can go to the next slide. So what do we want you to do? The first thing we want you to do is to become familiar with what a ballot initiative is. And if you go back to what I said in the very beginning, you can state it pretty simple. You can get your 30-second elevator speech down in the event that you get into a conversation with someone, either within the league or outside of the league, and they're just trying to understand, what is that and why don't we have it? Well, just being able to explain what it is important. And most of our members have not spent 2 years studying this like our study group and our League Action Team has. So it is simply an opportunity for voters to get signatures from other voters to have something put on the ballot for all the voters to consider and vote on. And that's it. That's all it is. It's when you break it down like that, it becomes very easy to explain and for people to understand. We want you to also review the position. and ask questions. As I mentioned before, and we can talk about this in Q&A, that we don't have a right environment right now to try to advocate for and push citizen initiative, but we will have a window of opportunity at some point in the future. And you've probably heard that phrase, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready, right? Or this is part of our getting ready. And what we have committed to the state league, the state board, that we will do is educate our league members so that we are ready and educated and can speak to this when the opportunity comes, that we can then successfully advocate for it. Next slide. So now we're going to move into our Q&A. I'm going to ask Ariane to pull Linda and Ellen up to help me answer questions.
Okay. We have several questions out there. The first one, Gay,